本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。What's good, Internet? It's Monday, December 9th, 2019, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 284? We did a lot of podcasting last week, and now my podcasting brain's all busted. I'm your host, Austin Walker, joining me today. Kato, in the studio. I'm calling in from home. I'm calling in from Queens, resting this podcast voice. Except we're still doing a podcast, but the rest is I didn't have to get on a subway today. Patrick also joining us.
Yeah, we're really running up the score with all those podcasts. We're doing, mild spoilers, shorter pods for the holidays, and so we're just bumping those numbers up.
Yeah, shorter pods for the holidays. Rob Zachney, can you testify to how short the pods were?
They were tight. They were quick.
Yeah.
I think it was a fun new format for Waypoint. I know people associate us with like long form podcasts, but I think we really mastered the tight 30 minutes format. And observing
if your argument is, had I allowed all of you to record those the way we normally do, it wouldn't have been 3 or 4 hours longer. You are fucking lying to me.
No. I'm just saying there was something aspirational. I appreciate that. I think that's in Waypoint's character.
Look, I couldn't go all the way because otherwise I would have had a revolt on my hands.
That's correct.
So it is, I had to set the stage for like future pods. Like, look, didn't that work pretty well? And then I tightened the screw a little bit further.
Yeah. Wow. This is how power works. I think because we were all doing pods last week for Game of the Year stuff, it's probably true that many of us have not gotten too deep into new stuff. But Patrick, I did see that this morning you were playing some Mario Maker on Twitch. And that meant that you were playing some new stuff that only came through with this new patch. How's that going?
It's really good. I mentioned this on the stream, but that there is a moment during one of our pods where I am asked to talk about Mario Maker, and I was pretty down on it. Like, I have been in a pretty bad place with that game in terms of its long-term arc leading to this big 2.0 patch. I think Nintendo did exactly what I expected them to do, which was like largely fail the community and to treat it as a proper service game in the 6 to 7 months after its release, and to leave the community in a bad place where there are people still playing, like myself, but they aren't as happy about it, and the creative community has largely left, or at least there are fewer people around making genuinely inspired stuff. And this update addresses a lot of that in some really meaningful ways. Before I get to the Link stuff, is the Ninja speedruns, which is a new mode in which Nintendo drops a level. I don't know at what frequency, but I know that when I logged in this morning, it said you've got 2 days left to do like this stage. So it seems like that's going to cycle pretty frequently, maybe once a week. And they put up an interesting story on the site last week about the origins of a feature in which different runs of enemies chase after you, which a lot of people associate with Super Meat Boy, but actually its origins are in a hack of a SNES emulator for Kaizo levels in Super Mario World. And I kind of follow its weird journey to Nintendo not giving any creative credit to something that almost assuredly had to. I can't prove it, but I can lay out the evidence and let you draw your own conclusions on how we arrived at this moment. But it's more fascinating than even I would have expected, because so when you're not seeing your deaths, you're seeing the runs of other players, and it seems like what Nintendo does is they match you up with runs that are similar to what you're able to accomplish on the run of the level. So my first time fumbling through the first snowy speedrun stage that they've set up, I'm backtracking.
These are only for Nintendo-made levels, right? These are
at the moment. The hope would be at some point this would be something that would be spread a little broader. But at the moment, it's only contained to this Ninja speedrun mode that they have developed. So it's Nintendo developed stages as well. it took me about 45 seconds to get through. And that was me just like bumbling the whole way through, running back to the left, running back to the right. So obviously it, gave a sense that there was a lot of improvement to be had the moment you put any sort of concentration or came up with sort of like a best practices way to get through that stage. And it marks like, so you'll finish a stage and then you see this big, long sort of timeline that shows like where you fall in the rankings and like where the majority of people fall in those rankings. So you'll see it's like, roughly around 30 seconds is where like the vast majority of players are falling in terms of where they're finishing the stage. And then of course that, that goes down as people get towards, 20 seconds, 18, 17 seconds seems to be the maximum. But every time it re-rolls or rather re-pulls the ninjas that you're getting every time that you're getting better at the stage. And so you record a better time, then you're going to get ninjas that more reflect like people who are within the pool of what you're going for. And that's interesting in a couple of ways. One, it means that like level optimization is difficult. Everyone's going to kind of run into a wall in which they're not quite sure, how could I possibly do it faster? And so you can tune the amount of ninjas that are shown on screen. It's not just, here's 100 of them. You can get it down to where it's like 4 or 5. Like it gives you a gradation scale there. And so what I found pretty quickly is that, actually, these are like hints at what I could be doing differently to get through a stage. Like, actually, if I do a butt stomp and then slide through this slope, that cuts off like half a second. So some of your runs actually become about like vaguely following what you were doing, but then taking notes on what other players are doing that are clearly allowing them to get through sections faster. And this reaches a point where I had sort of maxed out what I could do with, like I was doing the lower, like the level of setup was sort of a upper path, a medium path, and a lower path. And I'd seemed like I'd more or less done what I could do in the lower path. Like, yeah, I could kind of like do a jump a little bit easier and maybe shave off about a half a second, but it wasn't going to get me anywhere close. Like I was capping out at like 24 seconds. It's like, well, how are people sniffing at 20? It's like, it's not going to happen down here. Well, for when I had a path I was trying to optimize, once I'd already collected the hints I wanted from the other players, I'd turn off the ninjas so I could focus on just getting the run done.
So you can totally turn them off.
You can totally turn them off.
Okay.
You don't have to have them.
Cool.
You can just do a speed run without any ghosts sort of like following you around. And what I found was like, okay, I need to rethink what I'm doing. I'm missing something obvious. So once I like maximized that 24-second run, I flipped some of the ninjas back on and noticed, a bunch of them were going up. I didn't even think that you could actually make it to that third tier. And the level doesn't explicitly suggest, like very overtly, that's a place to go. And so once I went up there, it's a totally different stage. It's whole different sets of platforming challenges. It's all about sliding and like jumping on snowballs. And like it's a whole different way to play the stage. And I spent about 15 minutes on that. By the time I did that, I had optimized a different way of playing the level that I got down to like 20.02 or something like that, which put me in a pool of 38,000 players. I was, in the 38,000 bracket, which was like one tier away from the fastest tier of players that were doing the stage. Nice. And so it was just interesting because it's not just some like a goofy way to like see a bunch of characters run around. It meaningfully speaks to different ways to observe, study, and understand the level that you might not do yourself once you've like sort of like fell into a way like, this is the way to do the level and I just gotta do this version faster. It's like, no, actually other players have really good ideas and it's surfacing that through a clever use of data capture.
You still can't just pull up the top performer and watch them go. It's not like you can choose a ghost to follow.
No. Because in this sense, because it is like a timed limited competition, I think that's smart. Like I think that fits within the spirit of what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. I feel differently about that on individual maker levels in which there are levels that these levels are meant to be finished where a standard average level Mario player can beat it but won't have a competitive time, but you will finish it. There are all sorts of Mario stages that are made by creators that are not meant for you to finish unless you're like a high-level Kaizo player or it's got some weird... I mean, like, they're just not... Most people are not going to finish it. They're going to watch a YouTube video. And the way I've always wished that Nintendo would just let you watch either the creators like run... Like, even a creator run is not a world record run. Creators often don't hold the world record on their own levels. So a creator run would allow you to at least see it being completed, even if it didn't show you the fastest way through it with all the tweaks and optimizations.
Well, there's also the other thing here that we didn't talk about today is that you've noted in the past that this is Nintendo like actually nodding at speedrunning existing. And something I'm curious about is, there is a big difference between the average Mario Maker level and a good level for speedrunning. And I'm curious how you feel about the level. There's only been one level so far that has this, right?
Yeah, it's just this. Yeah, I haven't watched.
I'm sure there's update presumably in a couple days, and there'll be a new one.
Yeah, I don't know if they get archived so that like, hey, you can still go back and play those old levels, but they just don't count towards whatever. I'm not entirely sure of how they're handling the archiving of these stages, if they'll sort of just end up being ephemeral. But yeah, I mean, from the way like my chat was I was asking them like, hey, this has been around for a couple of days now. I mean, the update hit last Thursday. Like how are like higher level players, approaching it? And they, they're, while it may not be a like quote unquote speedrun level, like something you'd see at Awesome Games Done Quick, where it's catering to that kind of audience. I mean, where there's a will, there's a way. And those people, the people who have the high end, like the top tier times, are just doing incredible like optimizations of like sliding down things and like just things I'll never like. You could show it to me, and my fingers won't be able to pull it off. And that's what's kind of beautiful about this mode is like different levels of players get to shine in different ways, and because you get that sense of like what I could do better within your tier. That means it's like, okay, well, this is within your grasp. Like, you may not be able to do what like the best of the best are doing, but come on, like you could probably do this version of this jump if you committed to it. Once you've seen another player who is roughly at your skill level pulling it off. So yeah, I'm gonna be curious to see what those higher level speedrunners do and how Nintendo grapples with, essentially like. They want you to get better, but it's like if the fastest is so fast that you can never sniff at it, maybe that's fine. But it does introduce a wrinkle where they are canonizing people who take advantage of mechanical exploits and an optimization level that is not what they usually expect of people or demand of people in a Mario level.
Totally. I'm curious. Besides this stuff, this new update had the Link stuff, but it also just had a ton of new, whatever toy box fun things to play with, new parts for the levels. I'm curious if you've seen that stuff used yet at all, or have you only really seen the Link stuff?
Hell no, I just went straight to the Link stuff after I got the speedrun I wanted because I really wanted to see what people were doing there, and it's fascinating. The Link update probably single-handedly is going to stop me from putting Mario Maker 2 at like number 10 on my Game of the Year list as a punishment.
That's right, yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, you know what? You're here, but you're number 10. Like, don't be that proud that you made the list. And it's single-handedly going to skyrocket it in a way that we'll have to see how it settles. I got to put more hours into it. But I had such the biggest grin on my face. I was just chuckling and smiling the whole way through, not because of just novelty, mining nostalgia and putting sprites in is one thing. It is so mechanically diverse in a way that I was not necessarily prepared for. There's so many creative things that players can do in terms of there was one stage where it was select your character, and there was a pipe for Mario and a pipe for Link, and the levels were constructed in ways of approaching both. But then once you finished it with one character, you had to go back through it with the other character. On one of our podcasts, which I think this will be one that, again, as we time travel through podcasts, I'm going to answer something that I couldn't answer on a podcast here in the future. It's not like a Link level or a Mario level; it's a costume, and
it is a costume. Okay.
It is something that when you get hit, it falls off, and so often you have with these Link levels just tons of pipes that are dumping out Master Swords, so you can put it back on. It makes me think that Nintendo really should just allow for a level to be flagged as Link, and if you want to have multiple characters, then let it be a costume-based affair, because it gets kind of goofy where you're going, you can't go more than a screen or two before, a pipe is just dumping Master Swords because the level cannot be completed without having that equipped. But I actually expect Nintendo to meaningfully address that, because that seems like the kind of quality of life that would make sense feature that they wouldn't do. And that a thing like Link is something that I didn't expect them to do, and they do, which is, the fundamental tension for a lot of like Nintendo fans is they do lots of things you love and not the things you want them to do. And then you meet somewhere in the middle. But it makes it so you're playing just a different. Like sometimes I felt like I was playing an RPG. Sometimes I felt like I was playing a puzzle game. Like Link has so many different moves. Like you can sword slash, you can dash, you can shoot an arrow 3 different directions, which also has physics. You can do a sword dive. Like it just introduces all these different variables to play with, and the wideness of how those verbs can mash up with Mario's verbs is just creates like your head is just spinning as you see people start to figure out what to do. Like even what's fascinating is to watch in different levels, people have a pretty good sense of how to communicate if they want to communicate to the player through coins or arrows, like different ways of signifying like, hey, if you're not sure what to do this here. Like for example, in Mario Maker parlance, a Z that is created with like a track where you'd normally like slot like a platform or something that like moved along. If you just see a Z, that means a spin. That has just become canonical terminology to communicate, hey, you're supposed to spin here to get through this next section. That's born out of like Kaizo stuff, but that's a way of like trying to communicate that to player. And people don't know what that is for Link. Like for example, like a down arrow, it seems like an early way people are trying to say like, hey, this is where you have to
do the
dive.
Yeah.
The last level that I played before I finished up my stream was a Kaizo Zelda level in which you have to defeat.
Like that, it feels like
already. I know. In which you have to defeat 11 piranha plants on your way through a set of complicated platforming challenges that all incorporate the unique characteristics of Link. So there are big plant enemies that you take out with your arrow, and then there's a new toolkit from a new enemy. I don't know the actual name of it in Mario, but it spits out a rock and
spike. I think.
Sure, maybe. And you can dive sword onto that and pogo stick across it. And you can do a short pogo stick, or if you hold jump, you do a long pogo stick. And so the cadence of this level I played was like the first section is like shoot this first piranha plant, jump on a platform that immediately sinks. You have to jump over that, dive down with the sword to take out the next plant. As that's falling, you shoot an arrow across, which hits one of the switches that does red to blue that like alternates platforms that are functioning in the level. Jump onto the next. Oh, and then you fall. You shoot the arrow, and then when you fall to the next one, then you are like you're doing the dive bomb onto the stone, and that stone bounces you up. So you can just start to imagine how people are piecing together this unique mashup that takes advantage of the universality of Mario and recontextualizes what is even possible within this space. And I will be so mad if this isn't like the route they continue going down, because I think Zelda is going to give this game another 6 months runway where it's like hopefully, sometime next spring they're teasing another character, a Kirby.
Right.
I will say Zelda, what they've already incorporated with the bombs and everything, just immediately makes you think it's not a hard leap from here to go to a Metroid. It also exposes weaknesses that were already there in Mario Maker. You can't search for Zelda levels. There's just no way to filter it. So someone that has there's no tag for someone to do that. There's no way to search for that. So that exposes like a UI problem in Mario Maker that I would like to see addressed at some point, but I don't have a ton of confidence that,
it's gonna get addressed by there being a thing that just says click here for like Link levels, which is fine. But it's not like there's gonna be a new tagging feature. Like, you know what I mean? Right. I imagine they're gonna, that's my guess anyway.
Yeah, that'd be my guess, and something like that too. But if what I was looking for was a reason to be excited about Mario Maker again, and like this absolutely has accomplished it in a way, 2 different ways. I think the speedrunning stuff is really interesting and neat, and more than I thought. And the Zelda stuff is just when Nintendo called this a 2.0 update, I sort of rolled my eyes because it just seemed like, because you haven't done anything for 6 months, so anything would constitute a 2.0 update. But I believe the fan theory that when they were forced to allocate resources to do the engineering efforts for the multiplayer stuff right after launch, that probably shifted. Like, if you were to like shift the timeline, like if you just removed that and then pushed everything up 2 or 3 months, like imagine if this came out in the beginning of October or was like teased in September. Like, I, as someone that follows the community very closely, it just would be a different world in terms of how people would have maintained their interest. Certain people would have stuck around. Very encouraged, very excited. And if you put Mario Maker down, even as not a maker, the Zelda levels are just absolutely worth logging in and seeing what people are already pulling off. Because if this is just the tip of the iceberg, then I can't wait to see what they do next.
Cool. Someone who was maybe a little less excited this morning, we got on the call. Rob Zachney made a noise. Rob, that sounds like a dinosaur. I don't know what was that. That sounds like a Sega Genesis dinosaur.
Hey man, that Jurassic Park game on Genesis, I was always jealous of that as a SNES owner. That was one of those times. It was like, yo, we got the
you got the bad one. You guys got the one.
Well, no, we got that like top-down Link one that had the Mode 7 dungeons. That was cool.
Like the first-person stuff. That was cool.
But the Genesis one, you got to be a raptor.
Yeah, you could be a raptor. I ate a bunch of compies. I fought a T-Rex with another raptor. It's good. Anyway, Rob Zachney, Digital Raptor. How you doing? You doing okay?
Well, I had a weekend. So, Patrick, you may remember when we were at the bar the other night after the Bears' iconic victory over the Cowboys. As I was standing up, I cringed. I winced pretty badly.
You were having some issues, but like I'd say during the fourth quarter, I looked over and there was a lot of shifting in your seat that I could tell there was no reason to be uncomfortable in the game. So I just assumed you mentioned you've had back issues before. So I was worried that something had flared up.
I've had back issues for a while. And I had this like persistent like mid back right side, like, something I want to pop, but it just can't. And then there's my lower back issues. All that stuff. Turns out that a thing that can feel a lot like a back issue, but is not, is a kidney stone.
Oh,
no. And it is possible that over the course of that Bear game, by drinking about 8 pints of beer.
And those bad shots you described.
Yeah.
Which no one has heard yet because they're for Game of the Year pod.
Right.
Right, so you want to hear about that for so long.
The Her Story of podcasts, Austin. Just
it really is.
This.
It really is.
I mean, because that I believe that story truly happened on the New Year's Day pod. So that is so. It's like a month from now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kato, in fact, what you should do is break all of our separate audio tracks out into separate podcasts.
Yeah.
And
just
then
download all 4
just
of these and
imagine the delight and fun our loyal podcast audience would have in piecing together the chronology of these conversations. And then like there'd be a fan project of like restoring the podcast that we recorded in order. It'd be great. Anyway, so yeah, it's also possible like we were drinking lots of beer throughout that week. And I had some issues and I was like, maybe my stomach's a little upset, or I don't know, maybe the bed's too soft. I just don't know. Yesterday on the flight home, I started to feel really rough. Had a long cab ride with a very Trumpy cabbie back up to my place north of Boston, and the entire time I'm just like, something is real bad. Something is, oof, oh man, you don't mind. Yeah, no, I agree. Nobody would vote for Bloomberg because of the Jewish question. I'm just going to lie across the back of your cab. Do you mind? Don't worry about these cold sweats I'm in. So I get back home, and at that point, I'm like, I just spent an hour with like the worst fucking person. I do not want to go spend more time in the ER. So I'm like, I bet I can just walk. This is probably kidney stone. That's probably what this is. Some of the symptoms are a little scary, but whatever. I can probably just tough this out. I'll just drink a lot of water.
Oh, God.
And so my partner is just watching me pace around the house, chugging water.
Quick question.
And
Is this your first kidney stone?
first one in like 20 years. I had one when I was like, I just had a really random one when I was a teenager, and then nothing since then. But
Buddy.
yeah, I know. Apparently, that makes me pretty lucky as far as people get kidney stones. Like, once you get one, you get more.
I had a friend who literally just went through this weekend also, and so now you 2 for 2. That's kind of a scary alignment. Everybody watch out.
Yeah, so I spent a good portion of the day in the ER yesterday. And the only thing on the TV in the waiting room was an all infomercials all the time channel. And so I'm sitting there like just this
Which
room
is a
full
crime.
of like miserable people.
Yeah.
And Emerald is giving us like 13 reasons why you need to own an air fryer or something. Like it's just, this is the most chewy and crispy skin, and like somebody is yakking in a bag across the way from me for like the 5th time in an hour. So it was a pretty rough day. But I'll tell you, man, I have never felt better hydrated than when I was hooked up to an IV line and just like nestled under one of those warm blankets they give you, and given like really heavy duty painkillers. But once I finally got treated, it was very cozy. And then I was like, yo, this isn't so bad.
I like this. This is okay. I can
This is
live with
good.
this.
I felt like a beloved pet in some ways. Like everyone's just like, are you warm enough? Are you thirsty? You just want to sleep a little bit? Okay, that's good. Just let us know when you want to go to the bathroom. I was like, okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then in keeping with that theme, when I finally, got home yesterday, I was like, I'm gonna watch a bunch of The Mandalorian, and when I'm out of The Mandalorian, I haven't seen those Winnie the Pooh cartoons in a while.
Living the life, Rob.
Living the life.
Love it.
I'm a grown ass man.
Hey, listen, get yours. You deserve all the Winnie the Pooh you want, Rob. I'm gonna put that on record. No one can disagree with me on this. So I'm guessing not so much in the world of video games from you.
Not a ton, no.
Well, I'm glad are you feeling better at this point? Are you all right?
Yeah, I think I'm doing all right.
Who knows?
There's always the possibility. So the doctor, like, they did a CT scan to rule out other stuff it could be, and they were like, "Yep, there it was." And they were like, "It looks like it's about to leave your kidney, and then it'll pass at some point." And they were like, "But it's big."
Oh.
And I was like, but see, the thing they told me what sounded big, but they were like, that's nothing. But like, we didn't even have to do anything with that. That'll just pass. And I was like, it doesn't sound like it would pass.
No,
It sounds bad, actually. And the doctor was like, no, it's not bad. Otherwise, we'd intervene. But here, we're just going to give you water. Good luck.
Have fun.
Yeah. Here, take this medication. It's the most on-the-nose medication in history. It's Flomax.
Oh boy. Well, I'm glad you got through it, Rob. I hope it's truly
there's a game I
behind
played.
you. Oh.
We talked about it a bit on the end of the year podcast, but I never talked about it last week. I finally played Sam Barlow's Telling Lies.
Oh right. Yeah.
And I think more people should check that game out.
And look forward to your convo. Did we wait? When did we? What did we?
When was that?
We talked about that.
I
on,
remember. I think.
Yeah.
So I won't spoil anything. Yeah. That's. You seem pretty high on it, is what I'll say.
Yeah, I think a good. Didn't realize it was a game about like investigating police malfeasance after the fact.
Right.
But now that I do, like, once I realized that's what it was about, I was like, oh shit, I thought this was just like stunt casting. And instead, it's like, no, look at this like police operation just spiral out of control in the most unethical possible ways.
Yeah. I'm excited to get to that. Eventually, you gave me a real strong pitch for it. So, on the list, like every other fucking thing. Kato, how about you? In our brief break from Friday's pods, have you played much of anything this weekend?
I ended up going back to Life is Strange, try to catch up. because that
Oh, nice.
the
The
last
fifth
episode dropped.
Episode's out. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Did
still
you
hadn't
get through
played
them all, or
No, I still hadn't played 4, so I had time to do that over the weekend. And I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much in the playing of it. It felt like a strange kind of diversion from the story, but then I'm actually warming up to it after concluding that episode. Like when you're in the middle of it, I felt it was like, this seems like, I get how they get here, but it feels like they're being distracted, or it almost felt like a filler episode kind of a show. It's like, oh, here's a new piece of conflict that maybe comes a little bit out of left field. But I think they end up
weird,
using
a little
it
weird to add in episode 4 or 5,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But I think that's like, if you go back and watch like even some of your favorite shows, like second to last episodes are just like really difficult,
Right.
Because on some level they're trying to set up some stakes for the end without paying any of them off, and so like that. If like the two probably most difficult level, like plotting stages are like a pilot to get people in, and then like the second to last one where you're like, we're not quite there yet, we're kind of spinning our wheels.
Right.
But yeah, it is only 5 episodes, so it's not like we're talking an enormous season.
I do think that they end up by the end kind of circling back around on a bunch of character moments, character growth that has been building in a good way, but it was just kind of the central conflict felt a little like, this feels like a lot to add in the 4th episode. But otherwise, like after having finished it and like with a little bit of distance, I've been like, okay, that was pretty solid, and I'm very excited to see where it goes to in 5. But I haven't quite gotten there yet.
I'm have been waiting for the whole season because that is how I play games like that. And so now that's all out. I need to get to that also. Anything else you dip your toe into? Are you still keeping up with Final Fantasy at this point?
Kind of. I mean, I like played a couple quests like the other week, but then I haven't checked it out in a while. I'm trying to get through Control, and then maybe Jedi. Definitely not Death Stranding, but it's also a thing I started. It was a mistake. I don't know when I'll probably end up playing that more over the like break when I'm away from my console. I'll be able to pull it up on my computer and stuff. But
on the computer, yeah. I thought you meant Death Stranding, and I was like,
I was like, how are you going to do that?
I meant,
I got an early PC build. Don't worry about it.
I wish. My PlayStation now sounds like a fucking 747 taking off every time I turn it on. I think I need to clean the vents. It's been a while. It's very loud.
Yeah, that's already a kind of a loud system at times as it is. So that's rough. I have continued playing some Final Fantasy. I've made it to Ishgard. I've made it to Heaven's Word, which is not me mispronouncing Heaven's Sword, nor is it them inventing.
Wait, I thought that's what it was.
No, it's Heaven's Word.
No,
but there is a Heaven's.
But
is there Heaven's Sword?
No, there's
Sword.
no
God
Heaven's
damn
Sword.
it! I can't.
Sword.
It's Heaven's Word. It's like going towards the heavens. Heavensward. I'm there, and I'm going Heavensward. I haven't unlocked flying mounts yet, but I did ride a black chocobo. I flew it around, and I am fighting. It is already very. It is like I think I may have said this on a year podcast. Who knows? But there is like a narrator right away. There is like characters who I care about pretty early on in this thing. There's a great fundamental premise, which is that it's a war between like anti-dragon Catholics and dragons who have returned from some ancient slumber. But what if there's something else going on in this war? What if the war is a little more complicated than you think? And some interesting characters on the various sides of the conflict.
Awesome question for you.
Yeah.
I remember back when this Final Fantasy journey began.
Yeah.
You were like, I'm not skipping to the stuff everyone says is good.
Yeah.
But you could have skipped to this, right? Like there was a way you could have, I'm asking seriously now.
So.
Is there a way you could have skipped to this? And like, is that if this part of the game is good, does this become like, hey, just skip to this part and this is a good Final Fantasy experience, ignore the rest?
I need to check to see if you can buy just a skip to Heavensward. I know that you can buy a skip to the end game or to Shadowbringers, which is the current expansion, not the end game, but yeah.
You can't go back, even if you like buy the skip to the one after. You can't just go.
No, you can't go back and. Oh,
well, it's per character. So
it is per character.
I got that skip
but in
up
other
to
words,
Shadowbringer, and then.
But then your Shadowbringer character couldn't go back and play through.
Right, I just have to make a new one, and that one started from the beginning.
Yeah, I also think. Okay, yeah, you can do it. You totally could just purchase. You could just purchase a jump to Heavensward. You would also need to purchase some sort of level up because the skip is only for the story, not for your levels.
Right.
Which is very weird. But I don't know. I feel like it so far would be a weird place to jump on. The end of those patches. So the basic structure of the game is there's the main release. So A Realm Reborn 2.0, and then between 2.0 and a Heavensward, which is 3.0, there are like 6 patches: 2.1, 2.2, etc. And those are telling a connecting story that changed the world, that changed the kind of situation, that changed like who you're working for to some degree, or maybe not who you're working for directly, but like they changed the basic like frame of reference for the entire game. And some of the stuff at the very end of 2.55 is really, really good, or at least is like, okay, wow, they have figured out how to tell a story in this engine and with the constraints of an MMO. They're telling a Final Fantasy story now, fucking finally. There were like snapshots of it on that 100-hour journey, and even extended portions, so I thought were pretty good. But all in all, it's been very hard to justify that huge 100-hour jump, or investment to get to this point where suddenly I'm finally caring about these characters. And I understand this is just part of what MMOs are. Like, it takes a while to learn. It was already A Realm Reborn. They'd already fucked it up with the 1.0 release and had to relaunch it just to make it like viable as a game platform, as an MMO that anyone was having fun with at all. That's not fair. I'm sure some people really miss 1.0. I know there's lots of little nods to 1.0 throughout the game, so certainly it had its fans. But by the time you get to Heavensward, like, okay, there is. Just knowing who these characters are is helpful. Understanding that I've done work with them and this and that configuration. But if you can find a really good lore video or a really good like summary of what that main campaign is, I wouldn't be mad at you for skipping. I really wouldn't. Watch a cutscene video. I bet you it's less than 100 hours long. I promise. I promise you. You could learn everything that happens of note in A Realm Reborn. Plus the patches in less time than it took me to play through those patches or play through that whole intro. Again, intro, because that's what it feels like at this point. And it's just like, I do think that game is poorly paced. I know that they're doing a rework. Apparently they're doing a rework sometime in the next few months, next year, of the A Realm Reborn stuff. And I hope they do. I'm not one of these people who is like, I had it hard. The next generation should have it hard too. If the next generation gets free college and a better playthrough of A Realm Reborn and the 2.x patches, good for them. If Bernie wants to demand that Square Enix,
oh my god,
fix, yes, Rob,
this motherfucking cab driver.
Oh
so
god,
he goes on about like, I don't think a Bloomberg guy's going to get anywhere because people don't want to vote for. I would call him Jewish, but that is not how this guy phrased it.
Okay.
And then I'm like, well, I don't think that's true. I think most of us have moved past that kind of thinking, and also there's tons of people who like love Bernie Sanders. And then immediately, guy smoothly pivots to he had just finished telling me about how his kid works for the fucking Trump golf courses down in Florida.
Okay.
And how the Trump golf courses recruit heavily from local colleges. And he finished that story with, Trump has probably put, tens of thousands of kids through college in Florida. Why doesn't the media report on that? Huh? Probably because it's too positive. And I'm like, okay, whatever, sure. that maybe could be a decent way to get a gig while you're working in college. Though it doesn't sound like it's fucking charity. It sounds like they're just recruiting shift laborers from colleges. But anyway, so I'm like, hey, most people don't seem to have a problem with the idea of a Jewish president or a Jewish anything else. And, obviously Bernie Sanders is a widely loved figure. He's like, yeah, Bernie. Well, I'll tell you this, if he's going to give everyone free college for everyone, then, I want the $120,000 I paid for my kid's education back. I got a little bill for him. And I'm there in cold sweats, just trying to stretch my back out now. My head is like down under his seat almost. But I'm like, so how did Trump put anyone through college? You just finished saying that your kid had this great experience working at the Trump golf courses. And then you're like, but I still owe $120,000. Why don't people give Donald credit for that? And I'm like, God damn, how are you people this fucking dumb? How do you I can't even, and this is the
Patrick's
secret.
face right now is fantastic.
Don't argue with these people. Don't argue. I'm saying that it's like, this is fucking pointless.
Why engage? This is not a person in your life that you care about, Rob. This is not a person who.
The moment you got an inkling, you say, that's good point, and then you just stare out the window and just move
But
on
you
with
can't.
your life.
But you can't just be like, I don't know. Like, there's some things you can say good point to, and there's some things you got to be like, well, hold on.
I don't know. I can't no. Like, that person doesn't deserve my time to engage with them and try and change their mind. It's not worth it.
You
just wanted to make the point to feel better about yourself,
your cab
which I'm not
driver.
saying is selfish. I'm just saying but that's what you wanted to do there was like, I'm going to get it out there. I did it. I said it. Whereas I just be like, nah, fuck you. Just go get
drive.
fucked. And I'm just going to move on with my life.
I am not.
I don't know. I just
get
can't be
the impulse.
non-committal in the face of anti-Semitism, because if I ever want to run for UK Prime Minister, it's going to come back up and people are going to drag me for it. He was in a cab and he just sort of rolled with what this asshole said.
Our biggest hearts go out to those of you in the UK right now dealing with election anxiety. Only
Seems
a few
like a
days.
nightmare.
It seems like it happens so fast. Our election cycle is very long. It's very long and drawn out and terrible. And that is terrifying. But
Theirs is
very
faster,
quick,
and yet somehow it's
that is
still
what I'm
long enough
saying.
for the Lib Dems to reinvent themselves.
What I've heard is, they would just if they could just if Labor just had someone else in charge, maybe this time they'd be willing to work with Labor. Which is what they say every single fucking election. Anyway, before we dovetail into an entire UK election conversation, we should probably take a break. I don't really have a bigger Final Fantasy point right now because I'm only just dipping into the new stuff. Or not the new stuff, the old new stuff. The new stuff 4 years ago. But I will continue to play through and give people updates. I just know a lot of people are happy that I've made it finally to Heavensward, and you can rest easy. I got to the good game. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, talk about some news and maybe some emails. There is going to be a new Bioshock game. That's the story.
Probably.
Cloud Games. Cloud. What's
Factory?
Dream Factory? Cloud Factory.
No, it's Cloud something.
Cloud
Chamber.
Cloud Chamber. I say Cloud Nothings. That's a band. Yeah. What's Patrick? Do you want to catch me up on this, or Rob? Either of you? I don't know. Did someone blog this story?
Yeah, Matthew Galt hit it for us this morning. Cloud Chamber is a new studio formed by 2K with offices in San Francisco, and there's going to be offices in Montreal. It is headed up by Kelly Gilmore, I want to say, who is an old Firaxis hand. She's been an executive producer for a bunch of different things over at Firaxis through the years, going back to the XCOM reboot, early in the decade. So very seasoned production hands there. There's a bunch of old leadership from the original Bioshock games, but Ken Levine and like any sort of ex-irrational presence is like there's nothing coming out of Ken Levine or like a Boston studio for these upcoming games. 2K said in their announcement, this announcement came through a statement to investors, right? So this was very clearly targeted, more people, looking to buy stock rather than people looking to buy games. But their argument, what they're saying was, we are still several years out from any one of these new games, which is maybe why Patrick was a little bit like, so maybe we'll see something, but a lot can happen when.
Well, they've settled on an idea because this project, they say them formalizing the name. Like this game's been in development for over 2 years already.
Yeah.
Jason Schreier, who put up a piece, kind of like re-upping his reporting on this, was this has been in development in a pre-production phase for a long time now. In 2K Marin, and so like this is sort of the formalization of like the production pipeline that will actually build the game. It's probably 2 years off. There's a decent chance it gets announced formally next year for a game that comes out a year after that. But I say probably just because like they 2K has tried to make this game for a while now. It is not for lack of trying to make another Bioshock. A certain Affinity attempted to make one for a number of years before that one got scuttled, and now it's being sort of made internally over at 2K. So, I don't know what I don't even know what a Bioshock is. It's funny. Okay, another reference to a future podcast we will have. I will at least say we did a podcast talking about like the last 10 years of the immersive sim, and this game being announced right after we recorded that conversation is so funny because it would have been useful information to have to frame the conversation. Yep. But I guess we can kind of pick up again. Someone chopped together the audio, and you can get the new timeline version of this later.
Machete cut.
But it's just I'm
translation.
I'm fascinated to thinking through how they're thinking through what is Bioshock at its core. Like in the interviews, they more or less said like story is very important. Story is very important to Bioshock, and it's sort of like if you were to break it down into a formula, and that's probably true. And then from there, what does that mean? Like what is that? It's probably like big open space. I don't know where you start like chopping up. Is it our audio diaries? Do they come back? Like I'm just so curious what they end up plucking, taking away, rethinking. Because Bioshock means a lot to people, but if you were to ask them what does Bioshock mean to you, I don't know that people get much past story. And even that seems pretty.
You don't think
flimsy.
that they get to like abilities? Like cool abilities.
I mean, probably, but I think that's like low. Like if you're making a tier of importance, I don't know that I put that in like the A tier. Like I think you could take out abilities and you could still call it a Bioshock game, and people wouldn't feel.
I think people would be. I don't think people. If it's just like a game with guns, I think people would not feel. I think you'd get a lot of. This is for casuals or whatever the 2020 version of that is going to be.
I think that, the weird thing is I think Infinite left this series in a weird place because I think Infinite cut at a lot of what we would have used to define Bioshock prior to that. So like Austin, I would have agreed, it's about like abilities and doing interesting things in combat, because Bioshock 2 really refined what was there in Bioshock 1 to make abilities and the tactics they allow take center stage. Bioshock Infinite was so linear and so straightforward that really it downplayed those to the point where most of them for me were forgettable, right?
I feel like I had a different. I don't like that game very much, but like that game is filled with like that trailer was filled with people throwing crows at each other and like charging at each other full speed ahead and catching bullets out of the air still. Like all that shit is still in that game. I'm not saying it was not. I'm not saying it was as good as Bioshock or Bioshock 2 with that stuff. And then there's a reason I didn't say Big Daddies, because Bioshock Infinite certainly, or like combat arenas where you can create traps. Like I think you're right that it dropped the ball on a lot of that stuff. But I still think if you made a Bioshock game where the only verb you had was pull a trigger, I think even that would be too far for even the most cynical publisher. You're going to be able to shoot electricity out of your hand and then hit someone with a wrench.
I think they will. I just mean like I feel like that's like that is important, and maybe people would verbalize that. But I think that there's more going on about what attracts people to a Bioshock game that isn't necessarily what they would articulate as what they want, but is actually like undergirding or is underlying a lot of what is attractive about that particular way. Like I think like fantastic, like almost supernatural locations, like is like that's it, right? Like, you know, Rapture,
striking architecture,
like a very specific look, like a very like, you know, Bioshock Infinite for all its problems, like that's, you know, was it Columbia is the city in that one?
Yeah.
Like it's got to like they are striking to look at, where like their locations immediately like give you a sense of something, like awe, wonder, like there's awe, I'd say there's like awe and wonder intrinsic to both of those games. That is like part of the, I mean, which makes, you know, spoilers for Bioshock Infinite, like, you know, when you go back to Rapture, like for a game that I didn't like, I was like, holy shit, like, yeah, okay. I mean, in some sense it was like, yeah, because Columbia wasn't nearly as interesting, so take me back to the location I have a better emotional attachment to. But it was cool as hell, and it was because, you know, of all the endearing sort of or the legacy elements of Bioshock, probably the look of Rapture is the one that is held up the most.
Architecture taken from other times, and then like that go in line with some sort of an ideological through line narratively is the pitch, and then like interacting with that stuff in different ways. And so like, but I think that's part of the dilemma about making a new Bioshock game, is that it will, if you stick to that, it will end up feeling very formulaic. If it will feel like throwing the dartboard at the list of things.
How do you not make the outer worlds of Bioshock? Right. Is a little bit of like what the fear is, right? Like that you, it's like cool, like it's another one of those, but oh no.
What I was just thinking is maybe what you need to do is put a little outer worlds in Bioshock, because for me, I think the thing that would make a Bioshock feel immediately formulaic is all the Irrational games always played, and a lot of Looking Glass games did this as well, where they lived in fear of having you interact with a live character.
Yep.
And like, given like what I've heard about like the nightmare of programming Elizabeth, clearly not that studio's like forte, right? Like,
the amount of times at Bioshock you heard someone over a speakerphone or through a window. And it's like, wow, this is increasingly convenient.
Also clearly true via the writing of Elizabeth. Just don't let any real people talk to you in real time. You don't know how to do it right now. It's just, you'll get there, bud.
So I think the thing that might make a Bioshock feel like, if you make a new Bioshock, I think maybe you get one game where it feels like a cool retro throwback to like, oh man, it's been a long time since I've come to the aftermath of a great tragedy and sort of reconstructed it through exploration. Maybe you get to do that once, but even then, I think the very first time you realize like, oh, just everybody's fucking dead. Like, I'm never gonna meet the like, you know, Marie Delacroix equivalent in this, or like if I meet them, they'll be behind a wall of glass. And then they'll get killed.
They've been transfigured into a monstrous form of themselves.
Yeah.
And they will shout one-liners at me as I shoot at them from across the way.
Right.
I want to live through the collapse. Like, I think that's
at which
like
point you need that interaction stuff, right? Like, it needs to look a little more RPG-ish.
Yeah, like, because you know, in Bioshock, you know, some of the most evocative, like, you know, like voice diaries and the stuff you'd read about was like what happened during those moments when Rapture was going through the political turmoil. They like suggested in your head, like, damn, that sounds cool. Never actually saw it. And so, yeah, probably like if you're taking this pitch and taking the ball forward, it's okay, what's the next like collapse rooted in, you know, some ideology that like, you know, goes to an extreme, but you can still have the apocalypse version of it, but it needs to happen, you know, with the player experience that to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you got to do it like, and I think at that point you have to lean in more RPG directions, because I think if you don't, if there's not some sort of player expression, are you just making a high-minded Far Cry?
I have no doubt that they will be making a high-minded Far Cry. I have
Austin,
no doubt
let me
that
just,
they will be
it's
making...
2 years out. Just let me have something to look forward to.
Disagree. Will not.
Guess the only difference between Bioshock and Far Cry is how you spell the name.
We'll see. We'll see. It's a different team. I should not hold grudges to people who've not fucking started anything. I wish them luck. I would love to be impressed. I am cynical only because of how bad I feel about Bioshock Infinite, and honestly, having returned to Bioshock 1, not super recently, but in the intervening time, being like, all right, like there's stuff here, but like I don't want to do this again, and it is. I would love to be surprised here. I really would.
I hope because of the amount of time it's been, where it is actually kind of a little bit harder to pin down. Oh, Bioshock, like, what does that mean? Like, that's a much harder proposition to mix that up when you're iterating at the pace that 2K probably wanted to do with Bioshock, but got stuck with Ken Levine and his inability to manage a project.
Yep.
And so now having it, I mean, by the time this comes out, let's say it's 2 years out, that's almost a decade since Infinite, right? Mm-hmm. That's a long-ass time. Like,
It is.
And that's what I mean by, like, what do you want from a Bioshock game? It's like, I don't know, like, if you nail the cool look and I can, like, shoot lightning, the rest of it, like, if you nail a couple of the aesthetic trappings of what people, quote-unquote, want from a Bioshock game, at that point, you have a pretty wide canvas on where you can go from there. And my hope would be, the reason I, like, brought up Outer Worlds was that that game didn't necessarily take advantage of, like, the canvas from there, of like the bits where you could do something different or find new interactions, or it's like that game identified on a checklist a lot of the things I wanted and then like didn't do those things necessarily satisfyingly or more interestingly than I expected from a game coming that should be learning lessons from what those games did. And Bioshock's in a unique position where, for one, they'll have the budget that Outer Worlds didn't have, right?
Yes.
Like that game was that felt constrained by
and probably that
the resources.
Bioshock didn't have, right?
Right.
A place that I would love to see them learn from is the games that people who made Bioshock went on to make, and Bioshock and its sequels. Like, I would love to see them take notes from Tacoma. I would love to see them take notes from like the walking simulator genre writ large, and also kind of more systemic kind of first person stuff. Like, obviously you take a look at, like, we had that conversation about the immersive sim that no one's heard yet, but like the immersive sim came some distance in the time since Bioshock. It did not find necessarily a wide audience, but does having the Shock name open that up in a different way, you know? Mostly I think narratively it would be really cool to see them build towards ways to tell stories that don't always devolve into an arena gunfight. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, we know that's
time to set up my traps.
Right, exactly. Like, I would love to play an hour of Bioshock 3 that feels like Firewatch. And like is in a world and is all that stuff without it necessarily going all the way to like capital R RPG, you know what I mean? To where like I have to put stats and perks and blah 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 blah. I wouldn't mind that. I like that style of game. It's my favorite style of game, but I don't need everything to be that, you know.
There's a world where you can imagine them like splitting the difference, and like you arrive on a place that has collapsed, and then I don't know, let me travel through a portal, like, you know, some way that like you still frame it in that way. You've arrived at the end, but that they find meaningful ways to like send you back there and like have that cool. Like, this is before the collapse, so we're like a world where like the apocalypse, we're at the you're at the end state. Of course, you're fighting whatever monstrosities have been the result of this collapse, but then you're spending meaningful time. Transport me to a walking sim version of this. Take away all my shit and like let me experience a story in that world. And if they feel like they can't, you know, they have to keep all that other stuff to satisfy it being a blockbuster, all the other things that go into shipping a game like this and appealing to a certain audience. There's ways you can imagine narratively that you can accomplish both of those things and still give yourself some room.
Effects and cause the game.
Right.
Right.
That'd be great.
Sure.
That'd be great.
Give me a power where I pick up an object and it's imbued with memory. I don't, you know, when I pick up. Well, like when you start a video diary or like an audio diary, instead of just me listening to the dialogue, like, what if it was like the dialogue starts and then you're just transported there, and then you're like stuff like that could go a long way to reimagining what it's, you know, within still that kind of formula, but then finding a way to advance it given how long it's been.
Mm-hmm. I'll note that this press release does specifically say Bioshock is one of the most beloved, critically praised, and highest rated franchises of the last generation. We can't wait to see where its powerful narrative and iconic first-person shooter gameplay head in the future, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, those are the two things that they are calling out. Powerful narrative, iconic first-person shooter gameplay.
I can see the deck.
Bioshock. Yeah, yeah. Also, it does not say Bioshock 3, right? Like, this could, or Bioshock 4, I guess. Like, this, who knows what this is titled?
Well, in the
Could
statement,
also-
they're saying multiple games. They're like,
right, it's a franchise. Yeah.
It's Bioshock colon, you know.
But my bigger question is it Bioshock colon? Is it Bioshock?
Well, sounds like
Yeah.
Rob's colon was maybe getting Bioshocked.
Rob's colon was.
yeah, how do you think
Different.
bodies work,
That's
Patrick?
not where the kidneys.
Rob's colon was all
Look,
right.
I didn't
get the
I didn't have a
joke.
way to actually get to that joke.
I
That was the only way
It
I
was
could
right
get there.
there. I know.
And I could have said nothing, and I chose to say
A
it.
plus for effort.
Like
Thank
Rob in the cab, sometimes you have to speak up. There's a
This
world
far and no farther.
There's a world where it's like we are reimagining Bioshock from Bioshock 1. We are going back to Rapture. We're telling the story of Rapture during the fall. There's nothing. There's no new world here. Yeah. I'm putting.
No, I know.
in the
I know,
world. I
know,
want people's
I know.
expectations
No, you're right.
to be
the most cynical.
where mine are.
The most cynical. Like easiest. Like, hey.
And that's a hard game to make. To be clear.
No, of course. This in the same way that like 343 making Halo 4. Like, yeah, you made a Halo game. That's hard. Like, and you did it, and it feels like one. But then you finish it and go, right. Like that was fine, I guess. But I wanted something that tried something different.
Right. So there's a world in which this is not. That's why I'm kind of. There's nothing here that says this is a new world. Though I think
Yeah.
Gilmore does specifically say this is wrong. I'm wrong. Kelly Gilmore specifically says we founded Cloud Chamber to create yet to be discovered worlds and their stories within that push the boundaries of what is possible in the video game medium. So here is hoping that they find a world or create a world that has yet to been discovered and not the one that people go, oh yeah, that's Bioshock. I want to play that.
Turns out there's just one lighthouse.
There's only one. Yeah. There's only two, and one of them lies to you about how many other lighthouses there are. God, that fucking game. Any other news? Any other quick hits? Here's a weird thing that's not even news really, except it was news to me. Do you remember a couple years ago at the Game Awards, there was that game called GTFO? Real terrible name, but kind of cool looking alien co-op.
Some ex-developers of Payday or something.
Yeah, I think it was from folks who worked on Payday originally. Yeah, that game's out in 3 hours.
Oh, all right.
And on early access. And I had no idea. It's early access, so like I'm sure there's
Wow.
not a huge push. But that's cool. I had no idea that was coming out. I hope it's good.
Let me just see this bumped Elden Ring thread. See if there's just
you just take a
desperate
peek
to.
real quick.
Nope, nothing.
Nothing?
Just
Not- yeah?
nothing.
When is
Nothing here.
the things are this
Game Awards
week,
are
right?
this weekend, right?
It's not even. I thought it was. Is it actually this weekend?
I thought it was.
The
it this week?
Sorry, the Keeleys.
The
Let's
Keeleys.
see.
Aren't they at-
Da-da-da-da.
Aren't they during
The
the week?
12th, isn't that right?
The 12th is.
You know, if you search for the
Thursday.
Keeleys, we're the second result. How are we the only people calling them this? I don't like that.
It's a podcast.
all.
I think it was a podcast title, didn't
As a
we?
podcast title.
Yeah.
December 12th, so Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern.
Valve News Network, which is actually an extremely reliable, during the last 10 years where Valve has done, I mean, they've done lots of things, but if you Half-Life Valve, this has been your one regular insight into what is that company up to and why do they keep canceling projects that would make the fans very happy over and over again. That person, Tyler McVicker, just, Twitter names are always like a crapshoot. You'll say the name and then you'll find out it's a Halloween name later, but Tyler McVicker sounds right. It says Left 4 Dead VR is real. The Game Awards in a few days with new Half-Life Alex news. Get your
Excuse
minds
me.
ready.
Excuse me?
Sorry.
Different
News.
game.
News. The Game Awards in a few days. Get your minds ready. It's about to blow. Tyler. So yeah, sounds like that. You know what? I am here on some level for Valve just being like, all that shit you wanted, it's back. In a
VR.
format that you
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to play them in, and I like VR a lot, and I'm interested to see what they could do with something like that. But at the same time, it's also like, man, I bet there's like a team out there would just make like the Left 4 Dead 3 that people want, and like it's okay that you do that.
Yeah.
But sounds like I mean Left 4 Dead like in like the Source 2 engine, like Half-Life looked gorgeous, and to do that in horror, and like horror is uniquely suited for VR. That in a multiplayer setting, like I'm here for it. But man, I hope that is also just optional. Let people just play that on their TVs too, I guess.
Yeah.
Bayonetta and Vanquish on PS4.
I saw that. There's to celebrate the anniversary, right?
10 years. 10 years?
Jeez.
Bayonetta. I've still never played Bayonetta 1. Bayonetta 2 is one of my favorite action games ever.
4K graphics at 60 FPS on Pro.
I bet that looks good.
Yeah.
I bet.
That looks good.
What do y'all say we dip into the question bucket before we wrap things up here today?
Sure.
If you have a question, you can send it in to gaming@vice.com. That's gaming@vice.com. This one comes in from Joe, who says, "Hi, Waypoint team. This year I wrote about my choice for Game of the Year for the first time, albeit just a lengthy Facebook post. My method for ranking what I played was as follows. I wrote the name of each game I played on an index card, and then jotted down the things I remembered from the games. If you asked me what the best game of the year was before this exercise, I would have said either Control or Mortal Kombat 11, but the only card with no negative notes on it was Void Bastards. My notes also helped me realize I liked Fallen Order much more as a Star Wars thing than as a game. How often do you find yourselves appreciating or souring on a game with some distance from it? How do you square a good first impression with the failure to leave a lasting one?" Any thoughts here? I know we just kind of worked through the first part of this, which was the kind of collective conversations around Game of the Year, but we all have our own personal lists to come to kind of keep on hammering out.
Well, that's the problem with Game of the Year,
But
right?
yeah.
Is because you can have incredible experiences towards the end of the year as you're trying to cram things in, and that's disproportionate or unfair often to like games you had an incredible experience at the beginning of the year that maybe still stayed with you, but like for a game to stay with you like a whole year is just that's hard. That's just hard for any. Like I remember last year when I played Celeste at the beginning of the year, I wrote a tweet that was like, "This is a public tweet to have people remind me how I felt about Celeste in December." And it's like as November came along, like every day there was someone be like, "Hey, by the way, like I'm here. I set a calendar reminder to like literal calendar reminders to look up your tweet and remind you," which helped me like then remind myself, yeah, actually Celeste was like the best game my favorite game from that year. But that happens. It's a weird thing to wrestle with around this time of year.
Rob, I'm curious for you. Is there a process for you? Is there a way to make sure that you don't lose track of the things you loved earlier this year?
Yeah, I actually have a Word document, like just that I like going back years at this point, because I started to realize like recency bias was killing me when it came to thinking about like how I thought about games toward the end of the year. So I just started keeping a docket of games that had come out that I had played, a couple prompts to help me remember like what stood out about them, and then also categorize some games into like the justly abandoned tier, where it's like you don't need to revisit this toward the end of the year. Like there's like, even if you hear people telling you like, it's great, just no. You gave up on this, and even if you don't remember the reason, you gave up on it for a reason. Yeah. No need to. That game is in hell now.
Yeah. God. Yeah. This is a thing that we kind of get into a little bit in those pods to come. It's definitely it's tough because of. I will say what I think I end up saying there is like the 7 to 10 is always harder for me than the 1 to 5 or like the 5 to 10. That back half of figuring out, okay, well, what makes the cut is so much more important to me than what makes 4 over 5 or 3 over 2 or whatever. Who cares? It's like, what games have I decided to write about and cap off the year with? And in the process of doing that, I find myself. It's rare that there's something I felt really hot on that I end up completely losing track of. But that's only because I find I feel negative about most things that I play at the end of the day. And so it can be really hard to break that, which isn't to say that there aren't a bunch of good games out this year or that like, the top the top 10 games of my year list should really be a top 3 games of my year list. But the stuff that's in that top 5 is like locked, whereas everything else is like, yeah, I like this. Or the other half of it is like, how much do I like this versus how much do I want to recognize it? And there can be a difference there. There can be a distinction between kind of pure like id level joy, versus like I want to spend one of my slots saying that this team made something good. And that can be tough, but I like that process a lot. I like the process of writing these lists a lot because they help me focus on the year as a whole and not just, like Rob said, the stuff that's come out recently, and not just stuff that we've had to cover personally. That's the other thing. It's like, I love the excuse of like, oh, wow, I'm going to finally go back and play X, and I don't have to do it for content except for these 3 paragraphs. This is all the content it's about. And I need to summarize what I feel about it in those 2 or 3 paragraphs. That can be really fun for me.
I also, like, The Outer Worlds is a game that I've played more like the average person, which is like to say over the course of like 2 months. Like I just kind of plucked at it and come back to it in different times. Like just more like the average person plays a game over several months as opposed to all in one, week shot in order to get your take on it together. And I bet had I played it all really, really fast, what would have happened was that traditional thing where like you feel pretty good at it in the moment, and then like you get some distance, you have some conversations, and you're like, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Whereas I've had that process in real time, like with the game, because I like play it for like 6 hours, then take a 2-week break, and then play another 6 hours, and like in those chunks, like have come to cool on the game in various ways that I would have otherwise done, like in a larger sense, over the or put it in like my number 9, and then the year after being like, I probably should have put Untitled Goose Game there instead. Which is again like top 10 lists are like reviews. Like I think something we've always tried to stress is like it's a moment in time and a moment in thinking, and that thinking like treating any of that stuff as definitive is ridiculous given how much our tastes and attitudes change over time.
Yeah, I think
but that's also the fun of it. It's also the fun saying like, yes, this is it, and then later being like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It definitely is not, and I was wrong.
Kato, this is only the second year you'll be doing one
Yeah.
for us. So like, how are you going about this list making process?
Poorly. I told myself last year
Yep.
I should have made a fucking list. I started making a list, and then I forgot to update the list. And each time I like go back to the current list, I remember a new thing that I played. And I was like, oh shit, that's right. And I did have a good time with that. Fuck, now I gotta put it into contention. Like, I just need to be more like organized about it. But for the first time I did it, 2018 for me had such a strong like spread of games that I ended up making a Twine game where the list wasn't ordered because I couldn't bring myself to order it. And I feel like for some reason, at least this year, I can see a list forming already, even without having like. Even though I'm pretty sure I still have 1 or 2 games that I'm gonna remember before before the end of the year, but it's just yeah.
I mean, that happened. Oh god, that happened to me really bad this year with. We had a conversation about the decade, and there was so much stuff that we finished that conversation. Like 2 days later, I was like, "Fuck!
Yeah,
I can't believe we didn't talk about X." There's so many things. I think that's what's going to happen.
Somebody put us under a really strict time constraint to do that. Maybe we could have had a better and more comprehensive discussion if someone hadn't been waving a stopwatch in front of our faces.
And now we have reported the news.
That's a direct quote, right? For like another month.
This one's for Rob. Says Ryan, hey, can we get that chocolate chip bread recipe? Thanks. The collective will of the hashtag Dishcourse channel of the fan Discord, and specifically Rab. Rob, can we get that recipe? Can you put that recipe on the website?
Yeah, maybe.
Wow.
Wow. Ancient Zachney generational recipe cannot be. He's really hemming and hawing. You can't see it, but there's a hemming and hawing that's not tilting in the direction of disclosure, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple things, right? Yeah. One is it is
of course there is.
Like there's the family the recipe issue. Then there's the weird thing about family recipes is they mean something to you because they're family recipes. I don't want to hear what y'all fucking think of it. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's fair.
Like I don't want to I don't want to be like
yeah.
Like I don't want to share like, hey, here's this thing that my mom made every year and it's really special to my family.
Too sweet. It's too sweet. I can't believe you would make it like this.
Right. Well, here's how I would do it. And it's like, I get that. And probably, like, believe me, I've done my own fine tuning over the years as well. But, like, there is this part of me that's like, it's my family's recipe. And I don't need the feedback that would come with this. And so that, like, and that is a slightly selfish answer, but
that's
to an extent that, like, I do not feel like subjecting a really personal thing to public evaluation. That said, I probably would share it at some point. But I would probably also fine tune it before I did. Like, nobody's going to get my mom's recipe because I do think, like, there are criticisms that people would have, and certainly I probably have them as well, but, like, I can say them.
Right.
I've eaten that bread for, 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
You say shit about my mom's chocolate chip bread.
It's on. You don't want that Zachney smoke.
Down.
Yeah.
You don't want to step outside with Rob Zachney.
I'm not a regular.
Rob Zachney is big. Let me tell you about Rob Zachney.
I'm not regularly in those Discord channels, but like, you'll find out how fast I can show up.
Rename the channel. God damn. All right. God. This one comes in from a different Ryan, who says, on a recent episode, Austin asked for more input from couriers who have played Death Stranding. As someone who has delivered food and packages for places big and small, I certainly have some thoughts about how the game plays. I loved how the game handles managing item loadout, especially when it comes to vehicles. Working out of a truck, I would often have to play a sort of Tetris to make everything fit and plan out which order would be in the back and what I could carry with me up front. To be honest, as much as that suit looks like it would break Sam's back, I kind of wish I had one. Would have loved to be able to equip things to my hips while traversing city streets, especially. The fact that I have the time to explore and take in my surroundings in Death Stranding. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a delivery somewhere cool with great scenery, only to have it ruined by constant notifications on my device on where to go. I'll take BB and Iceland-like surroundings any day, rather than have to deal with angry customers. It's also nice to not be too morally worried about what I deliver and who is funding the company that writes my paychecks. Sure, there's questions that are raised about the United Cities of America, but at least I can turn the thing off if I get uncomfortable. Working for a big shipping company, I don't think I can mention it here, made me very stressed out about where its priorities were and if I could do it in good faith. I spent nights worrying about what I would be supporting and how I would have to reorient my life if I quit and had no paycheck to stay afloat. There's some not great places and things I've seen and heard about them, and thankfully, I was able to leave. Sorry for the long reply. I love the show. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Ryan. If you were a courier or a delivery person or any other sort of Death Stranding related person, I'm still interested in your stories. These are interesting.
How did no one write that feature piece? That just
I know,
seems
we're
like
just doing
out there
it
for
slowly,
the taking.
bit by bit. I know.
Did we
podcast
on the podcast? Did we circle back to the not the headphones, but like the shoulder phones? Because we sort of had that debate about like
neck
what they're
Patrick got
for.
them. Patrick
Well, I
got the
bought
next
them.
speaker.
Yeah, but somebody
I meant
wrote
to-
us about like what they're really for.
Oh no, we never actually did do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you want to?
I can't pull it, so apologies. Maybe Austin, you can find it while I'm leafing through here. But somebody wrote us about. We were trying to figure out what are those. They're not headphones. They are little shoulder like draped speakers that you wear, and we could not figure out who or what they were for. But we had the feeling that there was a use case we just weren't seeing, and this thing had an audience. We just didn't like understand where they were coming from. Somebody mentioned that. They're a regular feature on the assembly line where they work because you cannot auditorily like isolate yourself from the assembly line. You need to hear people talking. You need to hear people yelling. You need to hear alarms. So like safety standards mandate that you cannot just like pop in earbuds and go through your shift. And so these speakers leaving your ears open to hear other things, but still like creating a little personal sound bubble around you, are enormously useful for workers in those types of situations, which was really cool to learn about because, of course, it makes sense, but, it just never occurred to me. Last assembly line I worked on, they were very liberal about just letting people put on Walkman
headphones. Yeah.
On the other hand, we had a forklift driver at that factory who, in just the 3-4 months I worked there, caused multiple accidents.
Good, yeah.
Taking corners too fast with fully loaded, like huge like packing pallets, like an 8-stack of pallets.
No thanks.
And she would just whip this thing around the corner and
Not
see
enough
it
Shenmue.
lean. Everyone start running. It was great.
See, and if you all had speakers, you could all be sharing.
We couldn't have heard the oh shit. Yeah.
Right, exactly. God, it was really interesting, Rob. You pointing out with that device, like I guarantee you there is something here that they will not advertise this, but there is definitely a use case that none of us can just see directly.
Well, so what I learned was for other ones there are, right? So you go on Amazon. One, you don't have to pay $300 for a device that does roughly the same thing and actually has Bluetooth support. You can get it for like a third of that price for like very competent, and it'll work across all your devices wirelessly.
Nice.
You go through like the Amazon reviews of any of these ones, you get a lot of people talking about like their use cases in like different
sense.
parts of manufacturing or like this one, and very Sony has a long history of like expensive, limited use case, largely featureless, expensive tech stuff, which is cool. Like, and some
I
like,
hear
like,
refined.
Because if it had Bluetooth, you could move around a lot, and like this is so you can sit down and enjoy your couch more. Like, why would you want the advantage of mobility or the ability to not have a cord in your hanging out of your pocket? Yeah, sure.
Autumn writes in and says, it's a short one, Austin, all I want for Christmas is a defense of Dark Souls 2. Please go off. We'll have to see what's up with those Game of the Year podcasts, I guess. We'll just have to figure that out. Yeah, I don't know.
No way anyone can guess what we may or may not have talked about.
Well, the podcasts aren't out yet, Rob, so no one could know. So
complete
yeah,
black box.
yeah. I didn't know if you were being sarcastic there, but no, they have not been released yet. I know there was some question. Here is the last one. This comes in from JS, who says, "Hello, Waypoint. Cultural criticism in video game podcasts is rare to come by, so I enjoy listening to all of you each week. I come to you with an urgent matter, a request, and a question, both of which require your expertise. Please look at this image of my creation. It is safe for work." I'm going to post it right here in the chat. Boop. This is a code vein
Excellent.
interpretation.
This is
What if Waluigi from Mario, the Mario Tennis version of Waluigi specifically, existed in Code Vein, the sort of anime-like, anime and Dark Souls-inspired action game that came out this year. Question: could you imagine yourself in a relationship with Waluigi? What would that relationship be like? Thanks, JS.
Well, the question is, is this is the equivalent of you go to your high school reunion?
Yeah,
and like that person,
be careful who you make fun of in middle school.
Right. Someone comes around the bend, you're like, and everyone does the head turn. My God, look what happened to Waluigi. Waluigi got hot. But does that come with a personality makeover as well? Like, is it something that is just external? Like they're just hitting the gym, they're watching what they eat, like it's all that. Is Waluigi still Waluigi? Mm-hmm. Is this a one night stand with Waluigi, or is this a relationship with Waluigi?
God, I really need. There's that God. What is? Go ahead, Rob. You have a more complicated thought than me. I will hand this over to you.
The mustache is a stumbling point.
In general? Or do you mean in
Not
this
in
particular?
general, I'm not anti-mustache.
I'm saying in Waluigi generally, or in this particular instance of Waluigi?
It is very funny. The mustache remains classically Waluigi.
Yeah.
And everything else has changed.
Everything we should describe. Can you describe what you're seeing in front of you?
There's a long hesitation from Rob, hoping someone else would do it.
No, I can't. I don't think I have the language.
There is.
Just think of hot Persona style Waluigi, like, and then you're there. You're 90% of the way there.
Joker,
think like someone
Joker
writing,
from,
like drawing
Joker from Persona 5, but brown hair instead of black, and it's pulled
no!
back.
Look where the gloves stop.
Yeah, the gloves stop.
Oh no!
The gloves stop.
Those pants are so tight they squeak when he moves around.
The glove.
There's an audible like.
I can see fingers. That's how low the gloves are.
The
You know what I mean?
cuffs have leather
On the inside, yeah. Cuffed, 3/4 cuff, purple button-down shirt with a very
is real
tight,
good.
very small. I mean, not extra small. It's not cropped exactly, but a short vest. And blue eyeshadow, because he's got those that very light blue
little touches are important.
under the eyes. And then what looks
So
like
it's
three different Pockies kind of balanced on his upper lip.
I think that's what that is, to make the mustache. And then also the L, the upside down L is similar.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. It's a powerful look. I'm gonna be honest, I don't love to see collarbones. That's a turnoff for me. I want a little bit more.
These are particularly
really thick
dark.
collarbones.
Yeah.
They're like really out there all the way. I feel like as a vampire, that's not. I wouldn't want to have anything inside exposed as a vampire. Waluigi's a vampire in Code Vein because you're playing as a vampire because it's Code Vein. So this is what if Waluigi was a vampire. I feel like that's a double dip in a bad direction. I feel like Waluigi's already going to be kind of a parasitic partner. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so turning him actually into a vampire.
Hold the phone. Hold the fucking phone. Is that a...
What's up?
Scroll down to the bottom, zoom in.
You talking about that zipper?
On the leg. Is that a zipper? Is that a zipper on those pants?
Yep. Yeah, that's a zipper.
that's a zipper.
I noticed it a second before. Yeah. I was like, check that out.
Yeah, sometimes it gets hot out here, and you gotta zip off the bottom half.
Crucially,
also, it's
the entire
mesh
bottom half
under
does
there.
not zip off.
You don't think?
No.
Oh, because it's an angle.
I think that opens a flap. Look at those pants. You think those things have like a removable? But I don't think so.
cutout?
Those things don't turn into shorts.
What is
You think
that?
it just hangs? You think inside it's like a different color or
I
something?
think you
It's
like button
white or
down to your like
purple.
boots or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Oh my god.
Do y'all know the TikTok meme that uses the song "All In" to be impressed by someone beautiful? Here, I will link you a version of it,
Thank you.
and then you'll know immediately that I need this, but for Waluigi. The version that I've linked is
General
this one.
Grievous?
Oh yeah.
is what?
You have not seen. I feel like I specifically like.
yeah,
made
maybe
everyone
I've
watch this.
This is class. This is a running format on TikTok,
Right,
or
right.
was.
You didn't see this, Kato?
Yeah, I've seen these, yeah.
Okay.
But I need this. But I need this for Waluigi. I need this for this anime Waluigi.
I feel like-
Kyle, can you ensure that people see this anime Waluigi?
Yeah. I will make
Okay.
sure to link that somewhere.
Now I'm just gonna watch this TikTok again because
It's a good one.
am
Yep,
incapable
time to
of
watch
not
this
doing
20
it.
Funny. It's so fucking good. The best detail is that when this is from Echo Clo on Twitter, ECHOCHLO. If you do a search for my debut on TikTok is very on brand, you will find it. Before the reveal of General Grievous's height, she begins to type in how tall is, and it auto completes below to Darth Vader. Darth Vader 6'2", General Grievous 7'1". You already know what it is. Anyway, that's
Ooh.
yeah. Waluigi. Oh, please, someone make this. I'm begging you. All right, we are gonna.
I know what I'm doing with the rest of my afternoon.
Yeah,
Is making my first TikTok.
Fantastic. That's going to do it for us. Thank you for joining us. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Austin_Walker. Patrick, how about you?
At Patrick Klubik, look at this tweet from ABC7 Eyewitness News. Cocaine and Santa aren't usually associated with each other, but Walmart is apologizing for selling sweaters that show Santa Claus with lines of cocaine in front of him and the phrase, "Let it snow."
What?
What?
Let me get the image up in here for.
Wow, that is cocaine.
There we go.
This is
Tremendous.
This is gimmick infringement. People should go listen to the Beastcast Games of Fiasco I ran a few years ago because they stole this. I mean, obviously, I'm the only genius to ever think of what if Santa snorted coke, but God, this is amazing. Rob Zachney, where are you on the internet?
At whatever online store will let me buy that sweater. And at Rob Zachney on Twitter.
Oh my God. Kato, how about you?
At _Kato_appears.
As always, you can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/waypoint, waypoint.vice.com. I should have something about MechWarrior going up this week. I can't talk about it yet, otherwise I would have done that by now. Anything else? Anyone else want to plug anything? What else is going up on the site or has gone up on the site for folks to take a look at? That piece about the speedrun mode, obviously, Patrick.
Yeah, there'll be that. We have, I don't know. There's like big features should be going up, like examining the aesthetics of Halo Reach with its like the most recent update that
Steve Russo
343 did the Steam version. Yeah, I don't know. Unfortunately, the meeting where we start thinking about all that happens like right after this podcast.
Apologies.
So, yeah. I mean, really, it's a lot of like the next 2 weeks are a lot of small stuff while like Kato produces a Game of the Year podcast, sends it to me. I give him a transcript. We start building a post. We start figuring out, so it's a lot of like, how can we do small stuff that keeps the site alive while trying to prep the back half of the month?
Yeah, that's it. That's the thing that happens, and that is the rest of our year. I hope you'll stick around. We will have a podcast on Friday. I will be able to talk about MechWarrior then, and I love to talk about giant robots, so get ready for that. As always, thank you, Bowen, for letting us use the track "Miss You" off the EP Pale Machine. Find out more about that at waypoint.zone/BOEN. Until next time, I hope everyone has a good week and remembers to say, fuck capitalism, go home, vote the Tories out of fucking office.